Welcome to Leadership Coaching, the podcast, which builds on conventional wisdom and adds a fresh perspective on this ever-evolving field of coaching. Have we been misunderstanding leadership all along? Traditionally, we ascribe leadership to certain people, but what if leadership lives in relationships instead? If you've been struggling with your identity as a leader, it may be that limitations of an old model just don't fit. Join leadership coach Dr. Martin Kettlehut and results coach and certified IFS practitioner Bill Tierney as we discuss the nuances of leadership as relation. The Leadership Coaching Podcast, awakening the confident and compassionate leader within.
Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Coaching Podcast. My name is Bill Tierney, and I'm a results coach and certified IFS practitioner, and my co-host is Dr. Martin Kettlehut. And Marty, who I refer to Martin as Marty, others refer to him as Doc, and Marty's an author. He's also an executive, well, what do you call it? A leadership coach, yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So a lot of my clients are in leadership positions, yes.
And some of them are executives, and
Yes.
and Marty has recently written a book, Leadership as Relation. And today we've talked about a couple of different things that we might talk about, and we landed on change. We could all use a little change.
Well, from time to time, I think almost everyone wants to make a change. Not always, right? Some things you'd like to stay the same. Sometimes you're not, ready for change. You need things to settle. But at some point, almost everybody wants to make some change.
Yes. Well, and when they hire us, if they don't want to make some sort of a change, then it doesn't make any sense why they'd hired us in the first place.
That's true.
Interestingly, I have found over the last few years since I've been practicing using IFS, and that I apply that to my coaching clients, I do get clients that are not consciously aware that they're coming to me for change.
Mm-hmm.
I actually need to help them to realize that that's why they're working with me. They think that they're coming to me to learn how to use IFS so that they can heal and not suffer so much.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a change. If they're suffering and they don't want to suffer so much, that's a change.
Yep.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's an adequate coaching objective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm also interested in knowing if you didn't suffer so much, what might be possible. So, but the topic I think what we want to talk about today is what blocks change, what prevents change when we want it, what motivates change, why do we want to change in the first place, and what's the secret sauce? How do we actually change?
Well, one of the things that got me into the, like it went off like a light in my soul when I was first moved to New York City in 1998 or 7 it was anyway. And I read this book by Anthony DeMello, who is a Indian scholar of theology. And there's an institute with his name on it at Fordham University in the Bronx. And I found his writing, he writes very aphoristically, just, like 3 pages that are really intense and then a new topic. And so his chapters are short. In this first book that I was introduced to, he's written a number of things. Mostly other people took the notes and wrote down what he said. He really didn't sit down and write much. But anyway, in this book, it's called Awareness.
I was just looking to see if I've got it on my shelf over here because it's one of my favorite books too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And one of the things that really caught me, and like I said, had me think, I want to become a coach, is that he says that as long as you've got an agenda of change for some other person, like I'd really like to get him to be more polite to me, or I'd really like to have her, being more enthusiastic about her job. Like whenever we're trying to get somebody else, even if we're not, physically or, overtly, explicitly trying to get them to change. Sometimes it's just in our head going round and round. I wish she would be this way. That's when they don't change. There's an energetic resistance, right? When you know somebody wants you to be different, think about it. You immediately dig in your heels. I'm definitely not going to change now, right? Because he wants me to. And
Yeah.
it even if, in the end you do come around and you conform or whatever, for better or for worse, there's going to be that initial, because it's an identity thing, right? And DeMello says if you really want to help people change for the better, then what you want to do is you want to really understand them thoroughly. No agenda, just us understanding, like really hear them out, really get behind the scenes in their brain to see why they think the way they do and act the way they do. And then he says, you'll know that you really got to the bottom of understanding somebody when they start to change. It's, so it's a whole different approach, right?
Mhm.
And that got me. I was like, wow, if I can provide a deep enough listening for people, they'll change the way they need to most naturally of their own accord. And that was one of the big impetuses for me to go into this field.
Listening is the key, you conclude.
Exactly. It's the name of my company.
Right. Wow, that's great. That's a great origin story for your concept, for your business, for your idea. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as I'm listening through the lens of internal family systems and parts. And that's exactly what it is that I do with my clients, but at a slightly deeper level, or I would maybe not deeper, but hidden, to a level that's typically hidden. So I'm listening, of course, to my client, but I'm listening with the awareness that what I'm listening to is probably being influenced by one of their parts. And in the IFS model, we call this implicit direct access. So we're directly accessing the part, but not explicitly. We're just having a conversation with the other person. Yeah. But as facilitator of the model, I'm asking questions and interacting with the person, knowing that they're under the influence of one of their parts.
Right.
The part of them is influencing how they answer. And in a 10-minute conversation, what can happen is that the client can move from one part to another to another. I might encounter 20 different parts that show up in a single conversation.
Really?
So I might feel like I know the person better after that 10-minute conversation. And I do. But they aren't the same person 10 minutes into the conversation that they were 1 minute into the conversation.
That's true, right?
So the beauty of IFS is that if we can pause, and if the client is in awareness and agreement that what there is to do is to pause and focus on one part at a time.
Really?
So as coach, if I have permission to say, okay, that's a good place, I think can we jump in there? Can we go in there at that point, at that trailhead with that particular part? Can we get curious about that part and really understand that one? I was just in a group this morning and we actually were talking about this very thing. Everybody that's in this group, it's a women's recovery group, and everybody that's in that group wants something to change in their lives. For some people, it's, I want to stop drinking. For others, it's, I want to feel better given that I'm not drinking. I want to suffer less. For others, it is, I have so much anxiety that I'm not able to support myself in the way that I have in the past. I want to have a career. I want to have a profession. And I can't do it because of all this anxiety. Wow. So I want to change. I want to feel more relaxed and comfortable inside and not feel all this anxiety all the time. So what we were talking about is exactly this. So you're here for change, but when we're applying the IFS model, our goal is to simply get to know our parts, build relationships with them so that they trust us. Because eventually, if they trust us, they may be open to knowing what we know, such as, hey, it's 2024. It's not 1993. But when that horrible thing happened and this part of you went to an extreme place to prevent what happened in 1993 or whatever the year was from ever happening again, it went to an extreme. And now here we are 31 years later, and the part's still doing the same thing, even though everything's changed. If we were to just go to that part right at the beginning of the conversation and say, hey, wait, you're way off. Hey, part, you are way off. You're reacting as if it's 1993. It's 2024. Wake up. Come on, change your strategies. The part's, as you say, the part's going to say, you don't understand.
Right.
You don't get it. You don't understand what's at stake for me here. I am so invested. You want me to change? You haven't even stopped to recognize how devoted I've been, how hard I've been working to protect my host, the client. So this interest, this compassion, this curiosity, absolutely critical. That's the portal. It's what opens the door to being aware of what's actually happening. And with awareness, and that's why he called it that, why DeMello called the book Awareness. With awareness, now we can begin to open the possibility of change. And the tricky part is we have to hold that agenda very loosely. Remember it's there, but let go of it as we're getting to know the person that we're trying to help change.
Well, I think that delicate piece, I think there's detachment and trust going on that allows for that. Like, if I let go of this agenda of mine to change, whether I'm the coach or IFS practitioner, or if I'm the person whose part is being examined or spoken to, like, if you zoom out, what's happening is that there's a possibility here of getting back in the flow, getting back into the way, the free, rich self, right? And so it's like detaching from the way you think things should be, but also trusting, like, if I go into that realm, that it's going to work out, that it's going to be better. I mean, that takes trust.
That's right. That's right. You were referring to self. One of the phrases that I came up with this morning, I was telling you earlier that I spent about 45 minutes this morning trying on a practice that I learned about in this book that I'm listening to, The Road Less Stupid.
The title cracks me up.
Yeah, it's great. Well, he's obviously pretty wise about naming his book that, because it grabbed some attention without being too offensive. It's a business book. It's certainly not an IFS book. I would say I'd recommend it for leaders, especially leaders in business. But the things that he's recommending and telling about, they're designed to be used in business. I just want to give you the name of the author here. Let me open it up. It looks like it's, I think it's Keith Cunningham. The idea, here's what he says. He spends no less than 2, no more than 3 days a week, spending 45 to 60 minutes in the mornings, answering an important question, whatever that is for him. How do I increase sales? How do I get my sales team to take on the new software? What's going on that I'm not getting the results that I want? Just any question at all that seems important to answer. And as I was doing that work this morning on the question, I wanted to explore what are the messages in the book that I'm writing? What are the messages I want to make sure come through to the reader? And as I'm writing about it, I came up with a phrase that I'd probably now use in the book, which is ease of being. Return. So when you were talking about self, I thought of that phrase. Yeah, we all want to get back to ease, not ease like I'm lazy and I don't want to work hard, but ease of being.
It's important that you added that caveat, because I think there's almost an unconscious abhorrence of ease. It's very suspicious. This is too easy. We better check this out. Right? We're so convinced that it's gonna have to be hard. If it's not hard or expensive, then it couldn't be very good.
If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
Right, exactly. That's what
Right.
people say. Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Right. And this is hard. So this is about being. It's not about doing. So it's easy to do is one way to use the word ease or easy. My ease of being means that I'm not having to try hard to be me. I'm not having I'm not having to try hard to be who it is I think you want me to be, for example.
And that's where DeMello said, that's why then you get freed up in our relationship, because you've given me this freedom to be, that I become part of nature. Then I'm not an ego against the world anymore. I've been accepted and gotten for who I am. I'm free to be. And so I get back into the natural me, the natural flow, right?
Yes. And in that flow, there is ease of access to resources I otherwise don't have access to.
Within and without.
Exactly. Yes. Wisdom, for example,
Mhm.
clarity,
Mhm.
confidence, not acted, not performed, not confidence that's performed, even creativity that just is flows easily. One of the things I'm learning as I'm writing my book is that when it starts getting hard, I need to stop. I need to get up and walk away.
Yeah.
When it becomes difficult, not because I'm lazy, but because I'm trying. I'm trying to be creative. There's those two don't seem to work very well together. Effort and creativity.
I even like sports and other sort of physical oriented coaching does the same thing. Like, whoa, if it's feeling hard, then we got to change your swing, because it should feel good and natural. And if it's feeling hard, you're probably doing some damage there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So let's get back to we're talking about this, but let's name what we're talking about. We're naming how do we go about changing. And when I say change, I'm not talking about temporary. It's not like changing the oil every 5,000 miles. We have to do it again. I'm talking about how do we bring about permanent, lasting change that doesn't require ongoing maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
That's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
I remember very young man. I'd been smoking for 2 or 3 years. And I realized this is stupid. This is so expensive. It's my clothes stink. I've got holes in the upholstery, burn holes in the upholstery of my car, and my pants and my shirt. This is ridiculous. What am I doing? And I'm drunk, and it's New Year's, and the car I'm riding in, I roll down the window and I throw a pack of cigarettes out the window. Isn't this just a horrible story so far? It really is. The next morning, and I swore, I am never going to smoke again. That's the dumbest thing I've ever done. The next morning, I jump in my car and try to remember where I threw them out because I'm broke. I got no money, and I can't stand that I haven't had a cigarette yet.
Oh my God, I'm sorry to laugh, but
it didn't even last 12 hours.
Huh.
And I'm wanting to smoke again.
Mm-hmm.
When I finally did quit smoking, I smoked for 20 years before I finally quit for good. And I think the difference was that I was operating, it made sense to quit smoking. Not only did it make sense, I was highly motivated to do so. And I had a plan. And the plan, fortunately, worked for me. So there's a lot of elements. I wonder if we can pull that apart.
Yeah.
I changed permanently. I'm 69 years old now. So this year I celebrated 30 years without a cigarette.
Is there a getting yourself moment where acceptance and understanding and deep listening to yourself provided that sort of emancipation from the cigarettes? Can you
I
see?
wish I could say yes to that.
Uh-huh.
I think I had some self-awareness.
Uh-huh.
At 39, I was still a little boy in my
So,
thinking, my maturity level.
so you said there was motivation and a plan.
Yes. Let me tell you the story. I'll try to make it brief. You know how hard that is for me. So please help me out if I go too long. We've only got maybe another 11 minutes here before we have to end the conversation anyhow. But my daughter was born. And one of the first full sentences that she spoke to me was, "Daddy, stop smoking."
Oh my
And
goodness, really?
yeah, yes. And, or "Daddy, don't smoke," something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I was already, this is in the early
The
90s.
the Surgeon General says.
Right. She just didn't like the smell. She didn't like that, having to be careful around my hot ash on my cigarette. It, she just didn't let me smoke anymore. She couldn't be near me. She couldn't connect with me when I was smoking. Anyhow, that's the way I understand it. And it just pierced my heart when she asked me. She didn't ask me. It was a clear request. Stop smoking. And I really wanted to stop for her. My wife, who had been badgering me, "Oh, you smell you smell horrible. That's so expensive. That's so stupid that you're smoking." None of that. It's like you said earlier in this conversation. There was parts of me saying, "Oh, F you. You just quit smoking 3 months ago. Let's see how you do long term. And then you can tell me what's talking." But anyhow, when my daughter, my little baby girl, said, "Daddy, don't smoke," that pierced my heart. And I'm now motivated to stop smoking. And self-awareness began when I realized, wow, this is impossible. This is so hard to do. God, this is hard to do. I cannot. So a new piece of awareness showed up when, over the course of 4 years that it took me to quit, I realized that I felt relief the moment I decided. So I would quit for a period of time and would want a cigarette so bad. And I was working in the grocery business at the time. Somebody would go outside and have a cigarette on break. I would go join them and stand next to them, and then and want a cigarette and try not to smoke one. Finally, one day I just went in and bought a pack of cigarettes. And what I noticed was the moment I made the decision to smoke again, I felt the relief I was looking for from the cigarette. I said, wait a minute, I haven't even smoked yet, and I feel the relief. What's going on?
That is very interesting. Yes.
Yes, it is.
It wasn't about the smoking, actually.
Yes, I got that. That's what I got. So was I fully self-aware in the deep end of the pool? No. But I started getting little tidbits. Like, I want to, I'm highly motivated to. I realize it's not about the smoking. It has something to do with the mind. So, and I wasn't very advanced yet in my personal development. I was at the pharmacy picking up a prescription for my family, waiting, and I get a pamphlet, and it's from the American Cancer Society. And I think it said like 21 days to stop smoking. So I read it. I had time to read it. I read it. There was no cell phones at that time to scroll through. And it gave me a plan. Start cutting back today. How many cigarettes are you smoking? Cut back so that on your quit day, 21 days from now, you don't have any cigarettes left to smoke. And that's exactly what I did. And by day 21, I didn't have a cigarette. And this is so weird. I have never wanted a cigarette, not for a moment, ever since then, after smoking for 20 years.
So there was a structure that also you could, like a bridge across from smoking to non-smoking was this 21-day structure.
Yes.
That's very helpful as well.
It was. It was a project. It was a project design that I followed, a plan.
And there was a motivation or an affinity for not being a smoker because of at least the things that your daughter and your wife were saying.
Well, and society too. I mean, by the 90s, if you smoked, you were the scum of the earth. And I mean, at least that's how I felt about it.
Yeah. No, totally. Sure.
Yeah.
And was there any accountability around it? Or did you just do it on your own?
I didn't. I suppose there was accountability because I wasn't keeping it a secret. I was telling people I'm on my way to quitting smoking.
Right.
But it didn't feel like I was under any pressure, right? It wasn't that like I want a cigarette, but I told everybody I wasn't going to, so I'm not going to. That wasn't there at all.
So we could talk on another episode about the difference between pressure and accountability, but right, it wasn't pressure, it was accountability. Right.
go ahead and take a moment and make that distinction. So you've got a clear understanding about the difference right now as applied to me and not smoking.
Well, it's the same, and we could just, for purposes of this conversation, pressure's having an agenda that somebody should change.
Correct. And if I'm the one that the other person thinks should change, now I feel the pressure. Yeah, got it. Whereas accountability, how would you define that?
Well, easily being with somebody. Sorry, I'm trying to use that phrase, but it's got to have an ease in it and being in it, but it's supporting somebody in accomplishing what they want to.
So we're talking about compassionate accountability as opposed to shame-based accountability.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there it is. And I can't say that I had either of those. I was being shamed by somebody, but it certainly didn't help to be shamed in order to pull it off.
I think this piece about the motivation is really interesting to me too, because it involves something akin to having a vision. Like, I want to see myself with my daughter and she's happy to be with me and isn't, it doesn't turn her off. Like, there's a vision of you in the future that was so compelling.
Yes.
Right?
That was there for sure.
I mean,
I could imagine myself not stinking, not smelling like cigarette smoke as I walked in, not leaving the dinner table to go out on the deck and smoke a cigarette and then come back in smelling horrible.
Right.
Not spending the money on the cigarette, not feeling like I had to run out every 90 minutes to have a cigarette when I was working.
Mm-hmm.
Not smoking back in the milk cooler where I'm supposed to be stocking milk and not smoking.
Right.
Not feeling that. So there's a lot of nots there, but and that was a list of everything I didn't want, which is very useful, especially if you can take that same list and turn it into what do I want? I want to smell good. I want to have my time back. I want to have my freedom. I want to have choice. I want my health. I want connection with my daughter. Yeah.
I mean, I'm also just giving up cigarettes is a great example because it's hard. And, if you're really, addicted to the nicotine, it's a tough one. And so it's great, I think, to use that example. And I'm relating it to probably a less difficult, maybe not, a change in my life. The biggest change in my life was that I left, a life as an academic, which I was very adept at. I was very at home in academia, but there were two things that weren't getting fulfilled in my vision of the future in academia. One was that I was going to make a difference in the world and people's lives, and also not in some abstract way, but like measurable difference. And also, I didn't want to always, be alone in the library grading papers and reading books.
Yeah.
So I had a vision of being more working with other people and that we would produce results that made a difference in the world. And so that was what allowed me to let go of and change into a business person.
Yeah. So you were motivated, you were inspired, you had a vision. Yeah. Wonderful. And as hard as that was, what was hard about it? Just curiously.
Well, it's being putting yourself, you got friends, you got community, you got, people who can write letters of recommendation for you and all those kinds of connections. And then boom, now you're in a new world. Nobody knows who you are. You don't know how to behave in that world. Like it's very disorienting.
Yeah. Well, and you didn't mention it, but I'm imagining that security was something you had to let go of. That had to be really hard to let go of, the security of academia and the uncertainty of being self-employed, generating your own income by people saying yes instead of no to your services.
That's right. That's a big difference.
Big difference. I can see how hard that would be. And the identification too. To think of myself as a coach took me about 3 years. I had been a mortgage loan officer for 12 years at that time. I'd been an insurance agent for 2.5 years before that, and that took some getting used to. I'm an insurance agent. I never used to call myself a real estate agent because I only did that for 6 years. But I was in the grocery business for 21 years, so I thought of myself as a grocer. I played the guitar starting at 10 years old, so part of my identity was I'm a guitar player. I sang in a band. I'm a singer in a band. That was part of my identity. So to be coach or any role that I might take on, dad, when my daughter was born, I was 24 years old. It took me a while to identify as a dad. I'm a dad now. Wow.
Right.
What does that mean? How does that supposed to feel? Because I don't like how it feels. I kind of like how it feels, but I don't like all the burden of responsibility. And I love her. She's so wonderful. But I'm a dad. Yeah,
Mm.
it's so strange. Sometimes change happens as a consequence of actions and choices that I've made.
Mhm.
And then I have to catch up to it. Other times I want to deliberately change, and it requires some elements that I would say include self-awareness, motivation, and inspiration.
Awareness, motivation, inspiration. That's great. There's that captures the mellow thought, that getting yourself or being gotten. Then the vision part that we've talked about. And sorry, what were the three again?
Motivation would be the third one.
And what was the middle one?
So inspiration,
Inspiration, right? That's that future that that
that's the vision, right? Motivation. How much pain am I in that this will stop, and how much possibility do I imagine? That vision, that inspiration, is what drives the motivation. Yeah. Anyhow, there's more elements to it than that. We talked about things like accountability.
But I think that's if there are people listening to the podcast and they're like, wow, I'd really like to change this. There you got, accountability, self-awareness, inspiration, and motivation.
And motivation. Yeah.
Well, look at those four things as a start. I bet you'll start to down the road to change.
I've got a group in 9 minutes, so I'm going to have to end. Usually we aren't up against such a hard stop, but you and I had such an engaged conversation before we hit record. We're running out of time early. This one's going to go about 32 minutes. I really appreciate our listeners. If you've enjoyed listening to us, please hit the like button and then please share with other people and they can listen as well. If you're watching on YouTube, this is also available on Apple and Spotify and iHeart Radio. So you can just listen in your car or do what I do when you're out running or exercising, put on the headphones and you can listen. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. And until next episode, thank you, Marty.
See you next time.
That concludes another episode of the Leadership Coaching Podcast. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights to fuel your leadership journey. Remember, true leadership is not about you. It's about empowering others. Take your insights to heart and cultivate a mindset that will transform leadership from within your business, organization, or community. Thank you for joining us on this quest to leadership excellence. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we explore leadership as relation. Until next time, remember that you have the power to lead with confidence and compassion from the inside out.